Hi, good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very honored tonight to have Minister Tengku Zafrul Aziz, Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry with us tonight. Minister Zafrul has a distinguished career rooted in the financial sector before his foray into public service. Before his current portfolio, Minister Zafrul was the finance minister. He was also the CEO of CIMB Group Holdings. And not many people know this, but he has also appeared on a reality TV show called The Firm, where he is one of the judges assessing who gets to secure a job as a corporate high flyer with a sponsor. And in those days, the favorite tagline was, "You're terminated," right? Outside of work, Minister Zafrul is a keen marathon runner and a fan of the Liverpool Football Club. Woo. Okay, so I have a task for the audience here tonight. I see Minister Zafrul has many friends here who said earlier that they have many questions for him. So there's the QR code on the table, I hear, which will allow you to ask questions anonymously as well. It will then be transferred to my iPad here, my tablet here, and I will spend about half the time allocated by asking a few questions just to warm up while you guys think of questions to ask. So help me to make my life easier. Do half my job for me, please. I will start off with a few questions and then throw open to the floor. Okay, all my questions are very easy, okay? Only the difficult questions are from the floor. Okay, Minister Zafrul, just to start off, where in Malaysia should investors put their money into? Very simple question, right?
Where in Malaysia? We have the exco from Johor here. It is the exco for investment, so I have to be objective. But for Malaysia, honestly, companies that we meet or we met have always looked at many factors, right? They don't really look just at whether it's Johor or whether it's Penang or, I'm from Selangor. So they look at where the ecosystem is, right? So when you talk about semiconductor, for example, many companies have tended to look at Penang and now also Kedah because it's adjacent to Penang. And when you talk about, I think this is, I believe you know, when we talk about data center, they tend to go to Johor. So to me, it depends on which sector you're focusing on. Sarawak, people always talk about renewable energy and the ecosystem surrounding that. Of course, automotive industry, now we have an automotive high-tech valley in Perak. So it depends on the sector, it depends on the ecosystem, and of course, every state now has their own investment promotion agencies, and for us, at the federal level, MITI, we assist the state investment promotion agencies to ensure that when they do decide to invest in a particular state, we work together with the state.
Okay, so just now you mentioned Johor, right? The Johor Singapore Special Economic Zone, or JSSEZ, has generated quite a bit of buzz among the businesses in Singapore. And much of the incentives announced so far are targeted at the larger companies, right? Take, for example, there's this capital expenditure requirement of 500 million ringgit to enjoy the preferential tax rate of 5% for up to 15 years. But this will exclude SMEs and startups who will bring different value to the table, but maybe they don't have that kind of capex expenditure to spend. So what are Malaysia Investment Development Authority's incentives for the smaller entities?
Yeah. Well, first you have to understand why the two governments agreed to, well, this was in January, quite recent, to have the Johor Singapore Economic Zone. There's a lot of synergies between Malaysia and Singapore, and especially Johor. Yeah. And when we look at the industries, there's a lot of complementarities. So again, it makes sense to have this special economic zone. And it is not about getting Malaysian companies to go to Singapore or Singapore companies to get into Malaysia. I mean, of course, it could be a byproduct of that, but the main focus is to get investors from all over the world to come to Johor and Singapore. And this zone can accommodate and can be, have the right ingredients for big multinationals or even mid-tier companies to come, right? Yes, for SMEs, there's always support. I'm sure Singapore government has support as well. But for this Johor Singapore Economic Zone, we want to ensure that the SMEs come in as part of the supply chain to the multinational or the mid-tier companies that are coming in. So there are, of course, other form of incentives, but not necessarily the one that has been described by your good self just now. And we also have family offices in the financial city in Johor, and we also have many other key so-called attractive ingredients. One is we talked about mobility of labor, mobility of goods, ease of doing business when it comes to customs and immigration. So this also will help SMEs.
So you're following the Queen Bee approach. You're thinking that once the big investors come, all the others surrounding the ecosystem will also come together, the Queen Bee?
Yeah, in a way, because the spillover will be there, right? We have a big conference on Tuesday in Singapore, jointly organized by MTI and our ministry together with Johor state government, and there will be some good news that we will be sharing. The momentum is there. We need to sustain the momentum, but of course there are challenges as well. I think expectation is also very high by many businesses and investors who are interested to invest in this economic zone.
Oh, so something new is coming up? Will
Yes.
they be applicable to SMEs and startups?
We have to wait on Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah, October 14. Remember, he's a salesman for Johor, Singapore, as he's as well. Okay, so Minister Zafrul, now back to the new Industrial Masterplan 2030. It outlines an ambitious and commendable vision for Malaysia's transformation. It focuses on high-value, sustainable sectors for business owners and investors. Policy consistency is key for them. Could you elaborate on the specific mechanisms in place to ensure that the strategies and incentives laid out will remain stable and consistent, even though, and I'm not saying there will be, even through potential changes in government leadership over the next decade?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the National Industrial Master Plan and IMP 2030. There's other plans as well. Of course, recently the Parliament approved the 13 Malaysia Plan. We have the National Energy Transition Roadmap. We have the Green Investments, many plans that we've announced. And I think what's important is that we are clear that regardless of who is the government, well, the government of the day at that time, policies continue. And we've seen that. I think Malaysia have proven itself that the policies are consistent regardless of who is in power, especially when you look at the plans that have been rolled out. And this certainty is very important for business. So you gave an example of the Industrial Master Plan. It is a five-year plan up to the year 2030. It's based on 4 missions. And if you look at, it's a new approach, it's a mission-based approach, but if you look at the objectives, the targets, it is very clear that it is something that all Malaysians want to achieve, right? So we align both the private sector together with the government sector, and we ensure that regardless of what happened, of course, the document or the plan has to be agile and dynamic at the same time, but the spirit and the objective, the target that we want to achieve by 2030 for the Industrial Master Plan, for example, creates the right momentum for everyone to be together. Well, companies especially.
Okay. You have, in the past instance, pointed out that one of the enablers to achieve the mission of the nation is talent attraction and development, especially in the areas of renewable energy, advanced manufacturing, and the digital economy. What concrete long-term strategies is the government implementing to build a sustainable pipeline of local talent, Malaysian talent, with the technical and R&D skills required to drive these industries forward?
You're asking very technical questions. I thought it was going to be more interesting, like what Bill. Nothing about me, nothing about my life. Maybe the audience can,
Yes, yes.
It's 8:30, we all just had dinner, we are falling asleep, and you're asking about talent. Okay. Well, definitely, talent is key ingredient in many. I think you heard from Bill himself, one of the success factors is people. And for Malaysia, when we launched the National Semiconductor Strategy, we had the target. We want to train 60,000 engineers. Because at the end of the day, in the age where people are focusing on digital, focusing on green, these two agendas are big, and we're negotiating FTAs based on these two new agendas as well. People must be ready to support this new agenda. So for Malaysia, one of the key competitive advantage in certain sectors is because of the availability of talent. And this talent comes not only from universities, but from the ecosystem that has been built over decades. So you will have people trained in the sectors for many years. And in fact, we export talent as well. When I was here, I'm here, I see quite a number of Malaysians working for SPH. They got Anita there, right? I know they're here because they get paid better. But if we look at as any country for that matter, we need to really spend a lot of our resources and time even to make sure that we get ready for the talent of the future. So this is where the industry, together with the academia, have to collaborate closely. Because what we don't want is that we produce talent that may not be relevant for the future.
Okay, one more serious question
Yeah,
before I move to the pigeonhole, right? A high concentration of economic activity in Malaysia is in the
you question about
top 4
US,
states.
no question about
Later, you want a
geopolitics.
Okay, you want a very serious question, I will go to that later.
Okay, you can ask about Malaysia. Yeah.
Okay. So a high concentration of the economic activity is in the top 4 states, plus Kuala Lumpur, the capital city. So together, these 5 areas contribute about 2/3 of the nation's GDP. How then can the rest of less urbanized, less industrialized regions of Malaysia benefit from Malaysia's transformation plans?
Yeah. So if you look at the Industrial Master Plan, or if you look at the 13th Malaysia Plan and various other government plans, the roadmap towards achieving a high-income nation, these 4 states have achieved that. And you mentioned those 4 states. If you look at GNI per capita, they've reached the level where it's considered high income. But there are, of course, other states that are not at that level yet. So we need to ensure that we reduce the gap. So in those plans, what we've done is that we give various incentives to industries, to investors, in some of the clusters in Kelantan and Terengganu, for example, to get more companies to be investing in those areas. So, Sarawak, of course, was the latest addition to the high-income state within Malaysia. And we are also looking at Sabah. Of course, Perlis is a small state, so what are the advantages for companies to invest in there? So we need to assist. So the federal government is putting in resources, especially the right infrastructure, and hopefully with the support of the state, together working closely with the government, we can bring in more investment and therefore bring more development into some of the states that are behind the 4 states that you mentioned.
Okay. And I'm afraid even in Pigeonhole, they are all very serious questions.
Okay.
Right. Okay, there's one.
Okay, Pigeonhole.
This is coming from an ex-Malaysian. You're doing an awesome job for MIT. I've never seen in Malaysia before. What is your secret sauce is the first question.
Sorry, again?
What is your secret sauce? You've done an awesome job, or like MIT. And what is your secret sauce in driving? I suppose the person who asked this question is, what is the secret sauce in being so motivated and also driving the Malaysian transformation?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say at MITI and the various agencies under MITI and together with my colleagues, we feel that when we look at the plans that we have, we all need to work together to achieve it. So it's a teamwork, and you don't want to let down your teammates, right? So for me, even in Singapore, we have many colleagues here who are working closely with the investors in this room or businesses who are based here. So we feel that at the end of the day, we want to ensure that when we go out there, and for us, in our ministry, we have 3 pillars, international trade, which is challenging now, investment, and also industry. So this is where what keeps me going is the people that are all so committed and dedicated to ensure the success of the plans that we have announced.
Okay, there's a side question which is probably more interesting for you. You recently took over as BAM President, Badminton Association of Malaysia. Well, in Singapore, we also have a Singapore Badminton Association. What is your advice for Singapore badminton?
Well, I just took over the presidency of Badminton Association of Malaysia a couple of months ago. Badminton is the second most popular sport after football in Malaysia. So there is a lot of pressure and a lot of expectation. I'm sure Singapore is the same. But for me, badminton and like any other sports, we need to build the talent pool from the grassroots. Right? So if you ask me about Singapore, it's similar. From primary school, for Malaysians, primary school means 7 years old all the way up to 12. You need to ensure that we start them young, expose them young, have many tournaments, coaching, get the parents involved, because this is where, if you want to build a strong Malaysian badminton team, and today we do have, but we want to be more structured and to increase the probability of success. And for Malaysia, when I took over the presidency, I told the council members that we should try and get back the Thomas Cup next year and make sure that we get our first Olympic gold medal in the next Olympics. So let's see.
Okay. I'm hard-pressed to find any non-serious questions. Okay, this one. If you had a magic wand and could fix one thing holding Malaysia back from becoming ASEAN's top investment hub, what would you zap first?
What's the
magic wand that you could use to change things? What would you change?
bureaucracy?
Bureaucracy. Can you talk about it?
Well, what we are doing, basically, I think most of you here who are in businesses that engages customers, you look at all the customer pain point, like you look at the customer journey. So similarly, I think, of course, OCBC, you also do the same, right? Any product, you want to see what are the pain points and try and cut it down. So for Malaysia, we've seen the success with Johor. We had the Invest Malaysia Financial Center in Johor, where we try and reduce all that pain points when it takes months to get approval. And we reduce it to maybe weeks. Sometimes some industries or some of the approvals will be done within even a week or hours. So this is, I think, the biggest challenge for any government, biggest challenge for any companies as well, is to cut down on the processes, but at the same time managing the risk of cutting those processes down. And thankfully, with the advancement of technology, we are able to do that better and safer today. But we need to ensure that our people also are ready to embrace the new way or the new expectation of investors.
Can AI be applied in any of the processes?
Yes, I think AI has already. And I give you a simple example. If you fill in the same forms for different agencies, now you can fill in one form, and the AI will map it out so that you don't have to fill it again and again. So that will reduce time. So sometimes you go to utility companies, they ask for the same questions, not same question, same forms to fill. I mean, you're filling in the same information. This may sound very 101, very basic, but trust me, these are actually sometimes pain that we take for granted, that, people are used to it, but actually you can actually look at reducing that pain points. And we went through that. We had an investor journey process. We met all the companies, and that process is ongoing, and we had some sandbox for certain industrial parks, for example, certain zones, and we've seen the benefit, and now we are slowly rolling it out to other states.
Okay, back to something a little bit more serious.
Okay.
You have mentioned that in the current...
But you can't ask from the floor.
Yeah, this came from the
floor. Oh, this came from the floor?
Yes.
Okay.
Malaysia has to develop, you've mentioned this, Malaysia has to develop 2 kitchens to serve the West and to serve China. How do you think that affects Malaysia's future productivity, investability, and cost of doing business?
Yeah. Well, for those of you are confused about this 2 kitchen, someone asked me whether with the realignment of supply chain, given the trade wars between 2 major economic powers, whether this new realignment of supply chain based on not just resiliency, but based on economic security will mean that companies will then have to start realigning their supply chain based on the needs of these 2 super economic powers. The answer is, as I think many of you in this room are also aware, people are now no longer looking at supply chain or economic decisions based on just commercial reasons. They look at not just looking at P&L, looking at commercial viability, but they're also looking at economic security. So this is where many companies that we have met are being asked to ensure that if you are involved in certain high-end technology, you must make sure that your supply chain is very clear and secure that where it's heading and where it came from. So for companies, there will be challenges because some companies are obviously catering to many markets, including these 2 big economies. So they will then have to make a choice, or they will have to separate their business. So this is where, again, people are questioning whether it is sustainable, but businesses, they know how to adapt. And at the end of the day, we will see how this may impact some of the companies who are dependent on both.
Right. Okay. This is an interesting one. What do you think is the ideal relationship between Malaysia and Singapore? Are we collaborators? Are we competitors? Or are we frenemies?
What's frenemies?
Friends/enemies. You can be friends and enemies at the same time.
How do you be friends and enemies at the same time?
Well, in Chinese, actually, there is a saying that no one is really a enemy forever, and no one is friends forever.
It's like husband and wife.
Wow. Your wife is not here, right?
Yeah, I know. She's in Malaysia. It's not live yet. Okay. Anyway, I was just kidding. Just trying to keep myself awake as well. So for me, of course, I have many friends here in Singapore, and in fact in this room as well. I think for ASEAN as well, not just Singapore, for Malaysia and for ASEAN, we always talk about the principle of ASEAN centrality. We are all together. We have consensus-driven, and we must learn also to agree to disagree. Right? I think Malaysia and Singapore have gone a long way to disagree in 1963, to agree to disagree, right? And that's 1967, right? And at the end of the day, what we've seen, and we cannot deny this fact, and both need each other to be strong, right? Economically and politically. You need to both be stable as well. And this creates the right environment, it's a conducive environment for our people, for our country to grow. So the answer is better to be friends than enemies, better to be collaborators together. And we've shown that we can, and I hope that this Johor-Singapore Economic Zone is an example of how two countries can work together. It's different from Shenzhen, right? It's the same country, but this is going to be an important showcase to the world how two countries can work together economically to achieve a win-win situation.
Okay, there are a few questions on ASEAN, so I'm going to group them together.
Okay.
As ASEAN chair this year, Malaysia kick-started the development of the ASEAN Community Vision 2045. And one of the economic statements outlined is to increase intra-ASEAN trade.
Yep.
Right now, that's about 20 to 25% of total ASEAN trade. How can we encourage or drive greater trade among partners within this region that, actually, let's face it, we do compete with one another?
Yeah. Well, we compete with everyone, right? We compete not just with our neighboring countries, we also compete with countries that produce the same products, right? We don't compete as a country, but our companies compete when they produce similar products. Like for Malaysia, we compete with Thailand and Indonesian palm oil, for example, right? I mean, further go down, there's upstream, and further downstream, there are many other products that derive from palm oil. So that's one example. And so for me, with what's happening today, many are questioning whether the current economic order is still relevant, right? And you've seen how the Trump administration have made certain decisions with regards to trade, talking about tariffs. And for us in ASEAN, we continue to believe in the principle of multilateralism. We continue to believe that the rule-based trading system works. I mean, Singapore definitely, Malaysia as well. We came up with a joint statement, all 10 countries. So we need to show that, right? ASEAN, as a trading bloc, trades about 15% of our total trade is with the US. That's around 3.5 trillion US dollars, so it's big. And at the same time, we need to see how we can trade more within ASEAN. And you mentioned the number, 22, 23%. So in this year, end of this month, the leaders will be meeting at the ASEAN Leaders Summit, ASEAN leaders plus our dialogue partners. We will be signing an upgrade of the ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement. So this, we hope, will help increase trade within ASEAN. But one thing that I'm more optimistic about is that if we can conclude the Digital Economic Framework Agreement, the DEFA, that I think will drive even more. Because when you talk about trade, many of the SMEs and the micro SMEs are excluded from those trade figures. So with the Digital Economic Framework Agreement, the hope is that more smaller enterprises will be involved in trade because 99% or 95% of registered companies in ASEAN are SMEs, right? So if we can include them in, the projection is that by the year 2030, e-commerce, digital commerce will touch 2 trillion US dollars, so in ASEAN, right? So there's an opportunity to increase intra-trade within ASEAN.
And do you think that will happen by the end of the month?
I think we will substantially conclude the DEFA. That was the economic deliverables that we promised our leaders, and I think we're on track to achieve that.
Okay, the next question pertaining to ASEAN is that Malaysia is the chair of ASEAN this year, and in 2 years' time, it will be Singapore's turn to chair.
Yes.
What should be the key priorities for ASEAN to remain relevant in this uncertain world?
Yeah. Well, by the time this year we will have 11 countries end of this year, with Timor-Leste is joining ASEAN. And when Singapore chair ASEAN, I don't think there will be much changes in some of the trade policies that have been announced by many countries. So for us, we hope as Singapore as the chair of ASEAN will continue in the support of that principles of multilateralism that I spoke about. And for ASEAN as a group, it's important that we continue to engage each other. Right? We've seen some problems in certain countries within ASEAN, and that was resolved quite quickly. So Singapore have to play their role as chair to get everyone together, especially on key major issues, because we as a bloc are much stronger than if we are not as one.
Yeah. So, well, this one is a bit of a repeat. ASEAN is perceived as the world's growth engine, but it's fragmented, volatile, and complex. What 2 to 3 areas do you see, that Malaysia, Singapore, just for these two to focus on to drive mutual success? I think earlier you did mention, Deepa, that that's for the whole of ASEAN.
Yeah.
But Malaysia, Singapore, are there certain priority sectors?
Well, for Malaysia, Singapore, we have been fortunate that we've moved away from an agriculture-based to a manufacturing-based economy. If you just look at Malaysia exports today, 80% of our export is from the manufacturing sector, only 20% is agriculture and commodities. And that manufacturing sector, 40% of it, half of that is in the E&E sector, which is, complementing what Singapore is doing. If you see the export of our products, when it comes to E&E, of course, semiconductor makes the bulk of that. There's always alignment or product that's done. The fabrication is done here, the test and assembly is done in Malaysia, and some of the packaging is done in Singapore and Malaysia. So you can see the same company doing different part of the supply chain within these two countries. So for Malaysia and Singapore, we need to work on the strength that we have in those sectors. Those sectors have been in Malaysia and Singapore for the last 60 years, for example. And at the same time, we need to leverage off each other's strength, right? So it is important that we continue to do that. And I think this is what Malaysians and Singaporeans want as well, to see how these two countries can work together so that everyone wins.
So this one is on the larger global state. Do you foresee countries, especially in ASEAN, having to pick sides between global leaders in the future? Example, between the panda and the eagle? And how do you see both animals' development of tech and how their influences are going to reach the rest of the world?
Yeah. I think for ASEAN, it's important that we continue, in making sure that we come together. That's why we talk about ASEAN centrality and ASEAN neutrality. And it's worked for us so far, right? And to be fair, in our negotiations with the US, for example, on tariff for Malaysia anyway, there's never been a situation where we've been asked to choose, right? People understand that ASEAN needs to be friends to all, right? But the question is, make sure that we are really friends to all. So whatever we give to the panda, make sure we give it to the eagle as well. So we have to treat everyone equally, and not only that, even in our various multilateral FTAs that we have, Malaysia and Singapore is in many multilateral FTA together, one being CPTPP, we're also together on RCEP. So we need to continue to engage all other blocs as well. I mean, of course, Malaysia now engaging other blocs that we've never engaged before. EU, for example, we've stopped and now we're restarting. We also applied to be a member of BRICS. We just started our commerce negotiation with GCC. So this is where for Malaysia and for ASEAN, we need to continue to ensure that to manage these two giants, we got to show that we are working, we are acting based on principles, and that's the choice that we have as a nation and as ASEAN.
Okay, I promised to open to the floor just now. Any takers? I know Ravi said he wants to ask questions earlier. Are you serious?
There's a lady there. There's a lady there.
Yes, there's a lady in table 7.
Yes. What was the name?
Can you, Anita? Right.
Hi, Anita from the Business Times. Okay. All right. You wanted something to wake you up. So you have a very bright political future. So my question is, how did you survive the many political changes in the country, the change of guards, so to speak, in the recent years? What's your secret? And secondly, if you became the Prime Minister, what would be the first few things you'd do for Malaysians?
Okay, thank you, Anita, for those questions. I think the second question is very difficult for me to answer. It's a career-limiting move. Whatever I say. But on the first question, what if I can understand the context? You are saying that how do I personally navigate the politics, because I've gone. This is my third Prime Minister that I've served, right? How do we navigate that? I think what's important is that for me personally, you must focus on the job at hand, and you must make sure that you are contributing to the team, right? The Prime Minister is the captain of the football team in a way, and you have the ministers all have their role as the team. And if you can show that you are part of the team and you're a team player and you're contributing, then you will definitely survive, right? But at the same time, you need to ensure that you're committed and dedicated to the cause of making sure that Malaysians, in this case, the Malaysian people, the Malaysian companies, and also support you. So this is where you need to ensure that to remain relevant, you need to continuously engage, go down the ground, and understand what are the issues, what are the challenges. Of course, you can't solve or resolve all of it, but at least you hear them out, right? So this is where I think it's important. And to your second question, I think what's important is that for any leader, not just Prime Minister, is the ability to empathize with the situation that the person that's talking to you is facing, right? Sometimes in today's world, we tend to look at things from our own perspective. And this is where today many governments across the world have failed to see that when you talk about economic growth, for example, since there's a lot of business people here, when you talk about economic growth, you always talk about the big GDP numbers, for Malaysia, for Asean, for anywhere. But when you talk to people on the ground, they will say, yeah, you're growing at 5 or 10, whatever percent. I don't feel it, right? So this is where, as a leader, you need to ensure that when you talk about growth, that growth is inclusive, right? That growth has to be equitable. People are questioning now. That's why people talk about MAGA, for example, talk about issues about national interest, because they feel that they're losing out. And some industries also losing out. The gap getting bigger. So we talk about equitability and talk about sustainable as well, whether the growth is sustainable, because we've seen ups and downs. And finally, about resiliency. Right? This is where I think you need to look at it, look at the inclusivity, sustainability, equitability, and resiliency. So these are key things any leader need to look at going forward, given the geopolitics and geoeconomic challenges that we face today. And I think we'll continue to face in the next coming months.
Interesting that you use the football analogy. I have one question here.
Liverpool team, I'm talking about particularly Liverpool. If you are Manchester United, it's a different analogy. Yeah.
No, it's a neutral one.
Okay.
The question asks is, if Malaysia were a team in the Premier League, which one would it be and why?
Oh, I just gave you the answer.
Why? You didn't give the answer.
Oh, yeah. Liverpool, because, of course, we won the league, but not doing too well the last 2 games. But it's about, the consistency, right? At the end of the day, to win the Premier League, you need to win as many games as possible and more than others. So, and how do you get the consistency? Of course, you need to have a belief, a belief in yourself, right? So as a country, and all of you as well, I mean, someone like Bill, he believed in himself. You need to believe in yourself first to be able to get everyone else to believe in you. So for me, it's key that as a football team, Liverpool has shown, or any successful team for that matter, needs to show consistency, self-belief, and discipline, right? I mean, discipline leads to, of course, consistency. And those are key attributes, not just for a football team, but for any companies or any organizations.
And teamwork, right? Because you never
because
walk
the
alone.
teamwork, definitely.
Yeah. Any one last question from the floor? If not,
Yes, there's one there. Number 5. 9, 5, can't see.
Hi, Minister Pawan from the Straits Times. I've interviewed you several times, so over the years, maybe I'll just ask one last question. I mean, I asked you over the years about your political future. I think the first time I interviewed you, I asked you if you would continue in politics, because at that time you were at MOF and not yet with any political party. You said you would not join any political party, then later you joined UMNO.
And now
So I just, your senatorship is ending in December. So what's next? You continuing in politics? A new reality TV show?
Thank you very much. Yes, I think when you first asked me, for those of you not aware or don't know me, as mentioned by Hui Fen, I was never a politician before I joined the government. I used to be in a bank, and after that, just before the COVID, I joined the government. That was in February 2020. That's when, 2 weeks before the lockdown, COVID. So at that time, definitely I was not really focused on politics. I wanted to really focus on the job at hand. As Minister of Finance, it was a time where, a lot of things that we need to do, and there's no time for politics. But, the rest is history, and to cut the story short, now I am definitely in politics, and this is my 6th year in government, and you're right, my tenure as a senator ends in December. In Malaysia, you need to be either in the lower house, Dewan Rakyat, or the upper house, Dewan Negara, to serve in the cabinet. So I have that 6 years maximum I've done. So what am I going to do next? One of the things I've told the people on my table, if SPH is looking for people, I'm available, of course.
you're too expensive for us. Yeah.
No. You can pay me ringgit. But to me, politics will continue. I'm in it, and I will definitely want to continue to serve. And I hope that under Prime Minister Anwar, I'll be given an opportunity to contest in the next general election. But in between December and the next general election, I'm committed to continue to assist the government in any other ways. Of course, not through being a minister, but there are many other ways where you can serve the people and help the government, and I leave it to the current administration to see whether there is any role for me to play within the government, and if not, I will continue to serve in any other ways I can for the country.
All right, we have come to the end of the fireside chat with Minister Zafrul Aziz. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.